Hey, I'm Ron Drotos from keyboardimprov.com, and this is our piano myth busting video number 2, where we're busting a myth wide open. These myths, people think, oh, I've been taught that I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. Sometimes there's a good principle involved to understand it, but basically we want to get beyond that and actually learn how to play the piano, right? So myth number 2. When we're learning jazz piano, we have to start out by playing thirds and sevenths in the left hand. That's the thirds and sevenths to Autumn Leaves. It's a useful technique, but is it the thing we have to do? And is it a good starting point? That's what's going to, I find, holds many people back. And it sometimes for years. I've had new students who have been taught by other teachers they had to do this with every song right from the beginning, and it's just too much. And it's not even the way people play, really. So there's a couple aspects to this. So the idea is that if it's a, say, C minor 7th chord, in the left hand I play the 3rd, E flat, and the 7th, B flat, and that's it. And then in the next chord, in Autumn Leaves, this is in the key of G minor, it would be an F 7th chord, so I'd have the 3rd, A, 7th, E flat, and etc. So instead of a nice sort of rich texture with even just 7th chords like this, I get this. It has a logic. The interesting thing is that it's not a good place to start. I would much prefer that you spend a year or even 2 years. You could do that sometimes, but the main thing is learn the 7th chords. Play it with the 7th chords in root position or different inversions. Because you really hear what they sound like. Sounds great, right? It sounds great, we really hear it. This doesn't really let us hear the whole 7th chord if we haven't had that experience yet. And also I find that people who learn this from the beginning actually forget what the roots are because you're never playing the roots. You're like, wait a minute. Oh, you want me to play a walking bass or stride piano? I've never played the roots. Or shell voicings? Real shell voicings? Those aren't shells, by the way. They're sometimes called that. Real shell voicing has a root and then either the 3rd or 7th or both. 3rd and 7th. But it has the root in there in a shell voicing, as Bud Powell and Bill Evans and those people use them. But so why would you learn just the 3rds and 7ths? Well, if you've already gotten to, say, the advanced beginning or the early intermediate level, and you can play tunes. You can sit down and play 7th chords. Make up some nice improvs. Well, if I want to get into more advanced voicings like rootless voicings or creating my own voicings, not just what somebody else has shown me, if you sort of do it's kind of like doing a cleansing the palate. Instead of playing the whole chord, I'm going to play just the 3rds and 7ths. And it's kind of like the skeletal structure of the voicings. The 3rds and the 7ths, especially with harmony that goes around the circle of 4ths, like 2-5-1s and a lot of jazz harmony, it will the sort of skeletal structure will let you hear some nice voice leading, how one chord can go to the next without the roots and the 5ths. And believe it or not, the 3rds and 7ths are more essential in some ways than the other notes, even the roots in some ways. But without the roots, it sounds a little thin, or at least without other notes, it sounds very thin. So you go through it as a temporary phase to really get good at it. And then you start sort of hanging other notes onto it. So I'm going to play the 3rds and 7ths and also put the 9th in, or the 5th, or the major 7th and the root even. And now the 5th, and now the root, and now the sharp 9, and now the 9th, right? So you can put, I didn't even have the 7th in there. Just had the 9 in the G minor. I had A, B flat, D. I didn't even have the 7th. So that's the thing. If you look at how Bill Evans and people really played and used these in the left hand, they didn't even always have the 3rd and the 7th. You know, it's all what you're hearing in your head. And you don't have to go through sort of in-the-box learning for 5 years before you can start making up your own voicings. You could, you know, if you like that B flat, the A, B flat, D voicing on G minor 7th, you can use that right from the beginning. You don't have to just use 3rds and 7ths forever, you know? The other thing is that only 1 or 2 pianists historically really used just the 3rds and 7ths back in the day. You know, Wynton Kelly would use them, especially on a bluesy thing. They're nice to play in the left hand if I'm playing fuller chords in the right, like 2-handed voicings, yes, so learn them for that. But there's just so much, I guess they're overemphasized to the point of, you know, being ludicrous these days. Somebody sent me something they had seen where it was a lesson in the style of Bill Evans, how to play like Bill Evans, quote unquote. And the left hand was doing this. Well, if you look at transcriptions that Bill Evans play, he never just played 3rds and 7ths in the left hand. You know, he always added other notes to it. So people are thinking that's how Bill Evans played because somebody made a lesson in the style of Bill Evans, supposedly, and says that you play those 3rds and 7ths. So they're overemphasized as a end result. They sound a little thin. They sound thin in a jazz context. You know, doesn't this sound better? Those are 7th chords, even with the roots, right? So that's how I would play most of the time. If you do want to practice the 3rds and 7ths, do it as a stepping stone to fuller voicings, and also as a way to play the left hand when you're going to play other parts of the voicing in the right hand, like 2-handed voicings with the 3rd and the 7th in the left hand, say the root and the 9th in the right. Very valid for that, but not as an end in itself while you're playing the melody or soloing in the right hand. So hope that sort of gives you a nice overview of the role of them. Again, with most of these myths, as we saw in the first one, about can you look at your hands when you play piano, most of these myths have some element of reality to them, but they've been overemphasized to the exclusion of everything else and to the exclusion of understanding why we hear them as statements in the first place or directives, right? So that's the mythology of it, is that it's sort of an end result, right? Or something to focus on exclusively. So I hope this helps you with your piano pursuits. If you have any other myths you want to know about or things you've been taught and you're not sure whether it's the right way or not for you, and some of these might be the right way for one person, not the right way for another, of course. But it's about understanding why they're there, right? Please leave a comment and ask away, and we'll get you straight. Thanks for being here, and as always, the important thing is that you enjoy every step of the journey and let the music flow.